Welcome to my channel, Hidden Points. Imagine for a moment that you walk into a room, and without saying a word, every head slowly turns towards you. Not because you're the loudest, or the strongest, or the most dramatic, but because something in your energy just draws attention. Imagine having that quiet, magnetic presence, that subtle pull that makes people listen, even before they understand why. The truth is, people who naturally influence others don't rely on tricks or manipulation. They don't force their opinions through aggression or dominance. Instead, they carry a psychological blueprint that forms long before they ever become aware of it. Deep inside the unconscious mind lies a configuration of shadow integration, emotional attunement, and deep self-understanding that radiates outward like an invisible field. People feel this field long before they interpret it. To understand the psychology of natural influence, you have to go back to the earliest layers of identity formation, because influence isn't born in adulthood. It's shaped in childhood through patterns of observation, survival, and adaptation. Those who grow into naturally influential individuals often learned early on how to read the emotional landscape of a room, how to feel what others feel, and how to listen beneath the words that people speak. This early sensitivity becomes a foundation for emotional intelligence, and emotional intelligence becomes the foundation for influence. Now, imagine someone who can walk into any environment and instantly pick up the energy, the tone, the tension, the desire, and the unspoken rules. This awareness gives them an intuitive map, a sense of direction. They understand where people are psychologically before people even understand themselves. This isn't a skill they consciously use, but an ability their mind developed to survive, to connect, and to navigate life. People who naturally influence others rarely see themselves as powerful because their influence doesn't come from force. It comes from depth. And depth is something people instinctively trust. Now consider the shadow. Carl Jung believed that the shadow is the doorway to authenticity. People who influence naturally aren't afraid of their shadow. They don't hide their flaws behind masks of perfection. Instead, they radiate something far more compelling: honesty and grounded self-acceptance. When someone is deeply rooted in who they are, they become like a psychological anchor for others. People feel steadier and safer around them, and this safety becomes influence, because human beings follow the person who makes them feel less afraid. Imagine two types of people in a crisis: the one who panics and the one who becomes quiet, focused, and centered. The quiet one becomes the natural leader, not because they demand it, but because their calm energy pulls others toward stability. This is the essence of natural influence. People move toward emotional stability like plants move toward the sun, and the one who carries that stability becomes the one others trust. Now consider narrative psychology. People who influence naturally understand stories, not just the stories they tell, but the stories people live inside. They see the fears, the desires, the inner conflicts, and the wounds that shape someone's choices. They speak in ways that connect to these stories. They don't persuade others through argument or pressure. They persuade through alignment. When someone feels that their inner world is understood and mirrored, they lower their defenses and become receptive. This receptivity isn't manipulation, it's resonance. And resonance is one of the most powerful forms of influence because it bypasses the ego and reaches the unconscious mind. Now imagine someone who listens with their full attention, whose eyes stay steady, and whose presence feels warm and grounding. They create emotional space for others to open up. This space becomes connection. Connection becomes trust, and trust becomes influence. This is why people follow them without being asked, and why their words carry weight. We must go deeper into identity, because natural influence arises from coherence, meaning their words, actions, values, and inner state align in a single direction. People sense this alignment and feel drawn to it because most individuals live in inner conflict, torn between what they feel and what they think, what they fear and what they want. When they meet someone whose inner world is aligned, they feel magnetized, because alignment is rare. Now consider self-mastery. Natural influencers regulate their emotions without suppressing them. They respond instead of reacting. They observe instead of exploding. They evaluate instead of panicking. When you have this kind of emotional self-regulation, others instinctively turn to you for guidance, because humans follow the person who remains stable when the world feels unstable. Imagine a person who sees patterns everywhere: patterns in behavior, patterns in thought, patterns in social dynamics. These patterns form maps inside their mind and allow them to anticipate outcomes and understand people with near-intuitive ease. This intuitive pattern recognition allows them to speak at the right moment, act at the right moment, and remain silent at the right moment. Timing is one of the strongest forms of psychological influence, because influence isn't only about what is said, but when it is said and in what energy it is delivered. Let's talk about presence. Natural influencers don't rush, they don't chase, they don't force interactions. They carry a steady, grounded energy that signals, "I know who I am, and I know what I bring." This inner solidity creates external respect. When someone feels secure within themselves, they remove the pressure from the environment, and people can breathe around them. This is influence because people follow the one who makes them breathe easier. Now, consider boundaries. Natural influencers have quiet, firm boundaries that don't need to be screamed or announced. Others sense where the limits are and respect them instinctively. This boundary energy radiates from self-respect, and self-respect is the core of authentic influence, because people mirror how you treat yourself before they mirror anything you say. Now, let's go deeper into the unconscious. Natural influencers carry a grounded life force, a psychological gravity that comes from embracing the full spectrum of their personality. When you embrace your light and your shadow, your strength and your vulnerability, your confidence and your uncertainty, you become whole, and wholeness is magnetic. Fragmentation is repelling. People are drawn to wholeness, like water flows downhill, because it offers something their unconscious minds crave: integration, stability, and coherence. Consider social intuition. Natural influencers feel the rhythm of interactions. They understand when to speak, when to slow down, when to redirect, and when to retreat. This rhythm is something they feel, not something they force. Their intuition guides their behavior smoothly, and this smoothness creates trust, and trust creates influence. Now, let's examine authenticity. Natural influencers don't hide behind personas. They don't perform for approval. They don't try to fit into expectations. Instead, they embody who they are without apology and without exaggeration. This authenticity cuts through layers of social armor. People sense the realness, and the realness becomes connection, and connection becomes influence. Imagine someone who knows how to hold another person's emotions without collapsing and without absorbing them. This emotional steadying ability creates psychological safety. Psychological safety creates loyalty, and loyalty creates influence. This influence isn't demanded. It's earned through presence, awareness, and emotional integrity. Now, consider the inner voice. Natural influencers have a strong, coherent inner world. They trust their judgment and intuition. They don't seek constant external validation. When someone doesn't depend on approval, they gain freedom, and freedom becomes influence because people instinctively trust those who are not controlled by fear of rejection. Finally, understand this truth. Natural influence is not about controlling others. It is about mastering yourself. When you master yourself, others feel it. And they follow willingly because they sense that you carry the stability, authenticity, awareness, and integrity that their own unconscious mind seeks. People feel drawn to those who embody what they secretly want to become. This is the psychology of those who naturally influence others. They don't force, they attract. They don't pressure, they resonate. They don't manipulate, they understand. They don't dominate, they embody. And because they embody depth, stability, authenticity, and shadow integration, they become the quiet centers of gravity in any room. Influence flows to them like water finds the lowest point. They never need to ask for it. It arrives because of who they are. Thank you for watching. If this resonated with you, be sure to subscribe for more content.